Hi everyone, Shodas here. In this video, I want to go over my 12.13 support tier list, as well as the big changes in 12.14. If you haven't seen already, there are major changes happening for the next patch that I think will significantly change the current enchanter meta that I want to go in depth about, but for now, let's start with the tier list. The criteria that makes a champion high tier for my list are how the champion fits in the current meta, how the champion compares to other champs in their subclass, how many good or bad matchups the champion has, and how well a champion can fit into most team comps. If you look at the win rates of supports from the past patches, it's pretty clear that enchanters have been meta for most, if not all of Season 12. I believe a lot of it has to do with the durability patch, bounty system, and shields and heals being very overtuned. All of these things push enchanters to be the best subclass currently in Season 12. I've explained this in my past video, but to expand on the subclasses, I like to split the supports into small general groups. I split them into Hook, Enchanters, Mages, and Melee Engage. Again, I keep this very general as you can get very specific with the groupings, but it's a good way to compare the different subclasses. For my tier list, I take into consideration how a champion compares to a champion in their subclass. So for example, how does X Enchanter compare to all of the enchanters in their subclass? Third criteria is going to be how many good and bad matchups they have against all the other supports. And the last criteria is how well the champion can fit well into a team comp. Some supports need a certain comp to really excel, and others can fit into pretty much any team comp. With all of these things factored in, here is my 12.13 solo queue support tier list. Starting from the bottom, tier C and D are champs that are super out of meta and are the weakest in their subclass. Moving on to the B tier, these champions are good, but they all have subclass comparisons in the higher tier who can do their job slightly better. If you notice, a lot of the hook champs are in B because hook champions are good against enchanters, but it's still enchanter meta, so they are not in the top tiers. I'm going to go over all of the champs individually in the A and S tier, but not anything below for the sake of time. Starting from the bottom of A, we have Seraphine. The reason why she's at the bottom is because she does not scale as hard as a lot of the top tier enchanters, but she makes up for it by being a great flex pick. She's very strong in mid and ADC, so she can always be flexed if she has a bad matchup. She beats most enchanters in lane due to her range, and she can fit into most team comps because she has a very reliable engage and gives heals and shields. Next, we have Senna. A couple of patches ago, she was one of the best supports, but after 3 consecutive nerfs, Senna is now not as oppressive. I think she is still good as she beats most enchanters in lane, scales infinitely, and can still hard carry games, but she's just not as good as before. Moving on to Rakan, he is the most mobile support in the game, and due to this, he can find very big outplays. Durability changes also allow Rakan to survive a lot more, making him stronger this season and patch. He does struggle with scaling, as his itemization after Shurelya's does not synergize well, but it is made up with his playmaking ability. I think in Enchanter meta, he is the best engage support that can take over the game before enchanters can scale. Next we have Taric, who I think is one of the most underrated support champions. He is a melee engage enchanter hybrid, making him scale well and beat every hook champion in the game. His biggest issue is that he lacks a bit of kill pressure as his abilities are telegraphed, but if you can find angles to get into fights, you will be doing a lot. Moving on to one of my personal favorites, we have Ashe. She has been seeing a lot of play in solo queue for good reason. She hard wins against most enchanters in lane because of volley. She has permanent map vision with her E. She has hard engage with her ultimate. Her biggest flaw is that she struggles very hard against hook engage champs, so you can't blind her, but she is flexible. Moving on to Karma now, she is the best blind pickable support. I know I've been saying that a lot of strengths in these champions is that they beat most enchanters, but Karma beats all of them in lane. She also beats a lot of melee engage supports because Mantra Q range and damage is insane. Her biggest flaw is that she gets outskilled pretty fast compared to the other enchanters, so you need to end the game with your lead fast. Moving on to another one of my personal favorites, we have Amumu. In a meta where enchanters are the best, hook champs are the natural counter. I think Amumu outshines Blitz, Pike Thresh, and Nautilus because he has 2 Qs he can cast in a short window. I think with durability, a lot of enchanters are able to survive a hook from these other champions, but with Amumu, if you can land 2 Qs, the enchanter won't survive. Once he hits ults, he provides a lot of lockdown for his team. The only issue with Amumu is that he struggles very hard against melee engage supports, so you can't blind pick him. He used to be a jungle flex, but no one is playing jungle Amumu, so that is off the table. Next is Sona, who is the best scaling enchanter in the game. Unlike most of the supports who are in A tier, she doesn't beat a lot of the enchanters in lane, but she outscales all of them very hard. A lot of my reasoning into putting champs like Soraka, Yuumi, Lulu, Nami into B is because of this. They all scale, but why not play a champion who scales the best? Because it is enchanter meta, a lot of players are playing them, and this is great for Sona because she goes even in most matchups. If Sona goes even in lane, she will win the game. Even if she is behind, bounties make it so you can come back. Her biggest weakness is her early game. She has no CC until 6 and is super weak in the early levels, so she struggles a lot against hook champs. Your goal is to minimize the losses in lane and to scale into the mid and late game. Moving on to Bard now, he is very high tier due to his ability to roam and catch enemies out. I feel like Bard is good every patch due to his kit that gives him tools to be very flexible and proactive. He is not your traditional enchanter, but he does scale well. His laning phase is a little weak, but you're going to be roaming a lot of the times and he doesn't have a lot of bad matchups. Moving on to top 3, in third we have Zilean. He is one of the most broken supports, but not a lot of people play him, so he doesn't get a lot of changes. Zilean's utility is absolutely insane with his slow and speed ups, stuns, and revive. His biggest weakness is his early game / laning phase, as he needs some time to level up to scale. Moving on to my main, we have Janna. After the heal and shield nerfs during the durability patch, Janna's win rate shot up because she doesn't get outscaled as hard and she doesn't get one shot. Unlike most enchanters, her biggest strength is her ability to disengage, so naturally it makes sense that she starts to become strong after durability. Janna scales well and has strong roams due to her CC and speed in her kit. Her biggest weakness is that she does have bad matchups, so she is not a good blind pick. Finally, we saved the best for last, we have Renata. Like most new champs, she has an overloaded kit that gives her great engages and disengages, and she enables her carries. She also does not have a lot of bad matchups as she outtrades most enchanters in lane, and hook and melee champs can't get to her because of her Q, making her a great blind pick. Her biggest weakness is that she is immobile, but she has a lot of tools to get around that. Now that we went through the tier list, we can get a sense of how the meta currently is. After durability, champions are not getting one-shot anymore, so it makes sense that enchanters are the best. Early leads don't matter too much because objective bounties allow the team that's behind to catch up, and that's why a lot of scaling supports are great. The natural counter to enchanters are melee engage and hook champs, but they are currently out of meta because after a certain point, they can't keep up with the scaling heals and shields of the enchanters. Even if they win lane, they have a small window to push their leads because they just get outscaled. Mages are usually always out of meta in higher elo because they need a lot of gold to actually be useful. Moving on to the next patch, there are going to be some very big changes. There's a patch preview of 12.14 on Twitter, and this is what was released. The notes on the left show nerfs to a lot of sustain. Runes, potions, healing, and shielding are all getting nerfed while damage runes are getting buffed. You can see Scorch and Sudden Impact are becoming stronger. The notes on the right show that the dragon buffs are going to be significantly better and easier to take as they are nerfing the base AD and damage of them. Rift Herald is going to be tankier but give a lot more gold. So what does this mean for the meta? Riot is pushing for a lot more aggressive gameplay and less scaling. In the current meta, only Soul or Elder Dragon mattered, so a lot of the times giving up dragons isn't a big deal. For example, if one team has a scaling comp and the other has an aggressive early mid comp, the scaling comp would be okay with giving up dragons, and by the time they get to soul point, the scaling team would roll the other team just because of scaling. But now, since the dragon buffs are a lot better, this is not the case. With sustain being nerfed, they are rewarding teams that can play aggressive to stack dragons, as that is now a viable win con. So on 12.14, scaling enchanters won't be as strong, early leads will matter, and non-soul or elder dragons are now a win condition. Because early game matters a lot more, we will probably see a lot less enchanters and a lot more engaged supports. We can expect a very big change in the tier list and meta. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you wanted to talk about a champion that wasn't on the list, I'd be happy to do so in the comments or on my stream at twitch.tv/shodas. I stream Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7:30 PM PST. Hope to see you there. Goodbye.